What if the one question you'd never expect changed your entire life? It was a Wednesday, one of those ordinary days that never hint they'll be remembered forever. Emma Blake tightened the worn apron strings around her waist as she stepped behind the counter at River and Sage, a small, dimly lit bistro nestled between two shuttered storefronts in downtown Charleston. Her hands trembled just a little, not from fear, but from exhaustion that had long since taken root in her bones. Outside, the world bustled in summer heat, but inside, Emma's world was quiet, almost too quiet. The place smelled of coffee, rosemary, bread, and a dash of lemon, cleaner, familiar, and oddly comforting. It was a place where others came to relax, but for Emma, it was survival. Her shift had barely begun, yet she already felt the ache, her body reminding her that she hadn't slept more than 4 hours in weeks. Between caring for her younger brother, Micah, and juggling 2 jobs, Emma hadn't had a moment to herself in months. Micah's spinal surgery was scheduled for late August, and every tip, every shift, every skipped meal was a silent prayer that they'd have enough to make it happen. Her smile, practiced, warm, and always just shy of real, had become second nature. She wore it like armor, even when her stomach growled from skipped breakfasts, even when her shoes soaked through in the rain because she couldn't afford new ones. She never complained, not once. There wasn't time for that when your world was balancing on a thread. "Emma, table 7, he's asking for someone quick," her manager called out, waving a printed receipt from behind the register. His voice was clipped, but not unkind. Emma nodded, brushed a loose curl behind her ear, and turned toward the table in the far corner. It was tucked near the window, where the late sun spilled across the wood and made everything golden. She expected another tourist, someone killing time before a tour or business meeting, but it wasn't that. The man sitting there looked like he belonged somewhere else entirely, not just out of town, but out of this world. He was dressed casually, in a crisp white shirt and navy slacks, but there was something unmistakable about him, a quiet confidence, stillness, even in motion. His watch gleamed faintly in the light, but it wasn't flashy. His face was open, unreadable, like a page before the first word. He looked up the moment Emma approached. She offered her usual smile. "Welcome to River and Sage. Can I get you started with something to drink?" The man didn't answer right away. His gaze stayed with her, not in a rude way, more like someone trying to understand a riddle. Then, his voice, calm, deep, but soft enough to suggest he didn't speak more than necessary. "What's your name?" She blinked. "Emma." "Nice to meet you, Emma." He paused. "What's the one thing you want most in life?" She stood frozen, pen halfway to her notepad. It wasn't a pickup line. There was no smirk, no sarcasm in his eyes, just sincerity. The question landed like a stone in a still pond, ripples reaching somewhere she'd hidden from even herself. She stammered, glancing around to see if anyone else noticed. No one was watching. The room hummed with quiet conversation, oblivious to the storm rising in her chest. "I'm sorry," she said finally. "That's not something most people ask." "Then maybe more people should," he replied, folding his hands on the table. "I'm just curious. You seemed like someone who's been waiting for someone to ask." She didn't know what to say to that. She'd answered 1,000 questions in this job. What's the soup of the day? Is the salmon fresh? Does the pie have nuts? But never that one. He didn't press her, just waited. Emma looked down, eyes catching the frayed edge of her apron. She hadn't had time to sew it, hadn't had time for much of anything. She thought about Micah, about the hospital, about the envelope taped behind her bedroom mirror with the savings she counted every night like a prayer, about the list she kept in her phone titled someday that she hadn't opened in months. "I want my brother to walk again," she said quietly. "He's only 16. There's a surgery. He needs it. That's all I want." The man said nothing for a moment, but something in his face shifted. The stillness deepened, like he had just seen her, not the waitress, not the routine, but her. "That's not something you say lightly," he said. "No," she answered, voice cracking just slightly. "It isn't." The man nodded slowly. "Thank you for telling me." He ordered coffee and a sandwich, but Emma barely remembered writing it down. As she walked back to the kitchen, her mind reeled. Who was he? Why ask that question? Why did it feel like something had been set in motion the moment she answered? The rest of the shift passed in a blur, though he stayed for nearly 2 hours. He didn't speak much, but he watched. Not just her, but the room, the staff, the pace. of things when he left. He tipped generously, but it wasn't the money that caught her attention. It was the note written on the back of the receipt. "You'll hear from me soon. Stay hopeful. N.H. Emma stood frozen, the slip of paper trembling in her hand. N.H. Nathan Hart. The name meant nothing to her then, but in the days to come, it would change everything. And what started as a quiet question in the corner of a half-empty cafe would become the spark that lit a fire neither of them could have foreseen. The kind of fire that burns through doubt, through fear, through everything life throws at you and leaves only truth behind. The kind that begins with a single, unforgettable moment, and a stranger who dared to ask, "What do you want most in this life?" The next morning, Emma stood by the window of her tiny apartment, a cup of lukewarm tea cradled between her hands, her eyes tracing the slow crawl of clouds over Charleston's rooftops. The city, as always, moved on without pause, cars honking, dogs barking, people rushing off to lives she couldn't imagine living. But her mind was frozen, circling the same 4 words written on that receipt: "You'll hear from me soon." She didn't know what she expected. Maybe nothing. Maybe that strange man with the thoughtful eyes and soft voice had meant it as a kindness, just something to say. But it hadn't felt empty. It had landed too precisely, right in the space where her fear lived. She had spent most of the night staring at the ceiling, wondering if she should have said something else, something less raw, less real. She'd never told a stranger about Micah before. She barely told friends, the few she had. Micah shuffled into the kitchen, dragging his braces across the floor, eyes puffy with sleep. He tried to smile, but even that cost him more than it should. Emma turned to him instantly, placing the mug down to help. "I've got it," he murmured, though his voice was strained. "I know," she replied gently, but still kept a hand at his back just in case. "You always do." He collapsed into the chair with a sigh and pulled a half-eaten protein bar from his hoodie pocket. "Breakfast." Emma crouched in front of him, her hand brushing the side of his knee. "We're gonna get there. We're so close, Micah." He looked at her really, looked at her, and for a second, the boy she used to know flickered through the tired lines on his face. "I believe you," he said, "even if nobody else does." And somehow, that was enough to keep her moving. She went to work that afternoon, trying to shake off the memory of yesterday's stranger. The cafe was busier than usual: tour groups, families, the scent of peach cobbler thick in the air. Emma stayed in motion, clearing tables, balancing plates, pouring coffee, all while keeping one eye on the entrance without meaning to. She didn't expect him to return. Men like him rarely did, but at 3:17 p.m., while she was refilling the water station near the back, she heard a sudden hush ripple through the front of the room. Not silence, but that heavy pause people fall into when someone unexpected walks in. She glanced up and nearly dropped the pitcher. He was back. Same crisp shirt, though this one was grey. No entourage, no dramatic entrance, just him. The calm. In a storm of ordinary, he didn't look around for a table. He looked for her. Emma straightened instinctively and walked over, heart pounding. "You came back," she said before she could stop herself. "I said I would." There was no arrogance in his tone, just fact. "I have 15 minutes left on break," she said, unsure why she said it aloud. "Then maybe you'll sit?" he asked, gesturing to the seat across from him. And somehow she did. They didn't talk about Micah at first, or the surgery, or dreams. He asked about coffee, why she preferred dark roast over medium, how she learned to carry 3 plates without dropping one, why she never corrected customers who called her then, like slipping through a half-open door. The conversation turned back to what mattered. "I couldn't stop thinking about your answer yesterday," he said quietly. "It wasn't what I expected. Most people say money, a car, a chance to leave their life behind." Emma looked down at her chipped nails. "I don't want to leave my life, just fix it." That made him smile, but not in amusement. More like, "Oh, what if someone wanted to help you do that?" he asked. She stared at him. "You don't know me, not yet." She almost laughed. It felt like a line from a movie, but it wasn't said like one. It was said like a promise. He reached into his coat pocket and slid a card across the table. Plain white, no title, just a name and a number. Nathan Hart, Hart Foundation. "Call that number," he said. "Not tonight, not tomorrow. When you're ready, you'll know." Emma looked at the card like it was a trick, like it might vanish if she blinked too fast. "I don't want charity," she said softly. "It's not charity," he replied. "It's belief. I believe in investing in people who don't get believed in enough." The bell above the cafe door chimed again as 2 customers entered, breaking the moment. Emma looked down at the card. Her reflection shimmered faintly in the smooth surface. When she looked up, Nathan was already walking toward the door. He turned, only once, offering her the faintest nod, and just like that, he was gone again. That night, Emma stood at the sink, staring out the window while the faucet ran over her hands. She hadn't said a word to Micah about it, hadn't told anyone. The card was tucked into her back pocket, still warm from her jeans. She could hear his words again, looping through her mind. "It's not charity, it's belief." No one had said that to her in years. No one had ever offered her a choice. That sounded like trust. But now, the choice was hers. Call the number, or don't open the door, or stay where she'd always been. In that moment, she didn't know yet that the Heart Foundation wasn't just about helping, that its story was layered with secrets, debts, promises, and regrets. She didn't know that Nathan Hart wasn't just a billionaire. He was a man searching for redemption. And Emma Blake was about to become the one person who could give it to him. It had been 3 days. The card still sat on her nightstand, untouched, as if calling the number might pull her into something she couldn't undo. Emma stared at it every night before bed and every morning before slipping on her shoes for work. Not once had she reached for it, not because she didn't believe in it, but because, deep down, she feared what believing might cost. People like her didn't get chances like this, and if they did, there was always a catch. It was Friday when everything changed. Emma had just finished the late lunch shift. Her back ached from double-booked tables, her arms from balancing too many plates, her feet burned inside her worn sneakers, but none of it compared to the knot in her stomach after the call she got during her 15-minute break. The hospital. Micah had fainted during his physical therapy session at school. They'd taken him in, just as a precaution. But the words elevated stress levels and possible regression kept echoing in her head. He needed rest. He needed the surgery. He needed her to do something, anything, and she had nothing left to give. She took the long way home that night, circling the city on foot, even though her body begged her not to. The breeze coming off the river was soft and cool, a whisper of early autumn, and for a moment she let herself cry, silent and unnoticed, beneath the shadow of a weeping willow. That's when she pulled the card out of her pocket. She hadn't even realized she'd brought it. Nathan Hart. Heart Foundation. The name felt distant, surreal, like it belonged to a dream from a different life. Her thumb hovered over the number, phone trembling in her hand, and then she dialed. It rang once, then again. A third time. And then, a voice. "Thank you for calling the Heart Foundation. Please state your name." "Emma," she breathed. "Emma Blake." There was a pause long enough that she wondered if they'd hung up. Then the voice returned, warmer now. "Mr. Hart has been expecting your call." She blinked. "What?" "We'll send a car to your location within the hour, if you're ready to meet." Her mouth opened, but no words came out. The streetlight above her flickered. The city kept moving, and somehow, so did she. An hour later, Emma sat in the back seat of a sleek black sedan, staring out the tinted windows as Charleston blurred past. Her heart felt like it was made of glass, each beat cracking it a little more. She didn't know what she was walking into, but whatever it was already bigger than her. They pulled up to a brownstone overlooking the bay, modern, clean, but not ostentatious. A single security light buzzed faintly as she stepped out. Before she could knock, the door opened. Nathan stood there. No tie, no mask of politeness, just him, his sleeves rolled up, a notebook in one hand. "I'm glad you called," he said simply. Emma nodded, unsure if her legs would hold her. "Come in. You're safe here." His words wrapped around her like a blanket. She stepped inside. The interior was unexpected. Not sterile and corporate, but warm. Books lined the walls. A fireplace crackled in the corner. A piano, slightly out of tune, sat beneath a photo of an elderly couple dancing. He led her to a chair near the window, set a cup of tea in front of her, then sat across from her. No papers, no contract, no pressure, just silence, and then quietly, "Tell me what's going on." She didn't mean to break, but she did. The words spilled out, fast and messy, between sips of tea and the rising panic of a girl who had held it all together for far too long. Micah's condition, the bills, the late nights, the double shifts, The dreams put on hold, the scholarships she turned down, the parents who left, the quiet ways she was breaking, the loud ways she refused to show it. Nathan didn't interrupt. He didn't flinch. He just listened. When she finally stopped, her hands were shaking. "I know I sound desperate," she whispered. "You sound human," he said. She looked up, and for the first time in days, maybe months, she saw someone who didn't just hear her. He understood her. "I don't want you to fix everything," she said. I just want a chance." Nathan leaned forward, elbows on knees. "And that's exactly what I want to give you. Not a handout, not pity, a partnership." Emma frowned. "What do you mean?" He reached for the notebook, flipping it open. Inside were pages, dozens of them, filled with handwritten notes, names, circumstances, plans. "This foundation," he said, "it's not about throwing money at problems. It's about investing in stories that matter. People who matter. You matter, Emma." Her throat tightened. "I want to help cover Micah's surgery," he continued. "But I also want to help you build a life that doesn't fall apart if you stop working for one day. I want to sponsor your return to school. I want to help you start over." It didn't feel real. Emma stared at him, afraid to speak, afraid to hope. "Why me?" she asked at last. He met her eyes, and what she saw there was more than compassion. It was pain. The kind of pain only someone who had lost something precious could carry. "Because once," he said quietly, "someone asked me what I wanted most, and I didn't know how to answer. So I lost everything." He stood, walked to the window, and added, "I promised myself, if I ever met someone brave enough to know their answer, I'd never let them go unheard." The room fell silent. And Emma understood this wasn't just her story anymore. It was their story now, and it was only just beginning. 3 weeks had passed. Emma no longer waited tables at the cafe. It had been the hardest shift to walk away from, not because she loved it, but because it was safe. Known, but safety, she was learning, didn't always mean security. Sometimes it meant survival disguised as routine. Now, every morning began the same. She'd rise before the sun, make a quiet breakfast with Micah, then board the foundation's transport shuttle to a community education campus just outside the city. She'd enrolled in a condensed business certification programs entirely by the Heart Foundation. The idea of sitting in a classroom again had terrified her at first, but it wasn't like it used to be. This time, she wanted to learn. This time, it wasn't just about dreams, it was about rebuilding. And Micah. Micah was smiling again. His surgery had been scheduled. The best pediatric neurosurgeon in the Southeast was flying in to oversee the operation. His medication was now delivered weekly, costs covered. Physical therapy appointments were steady. But more than that, there was hope in his eyes. Real hope. Emma could see it every time he asked about her day. Every time he said, "I can't wait to walk without this cane," with something close to laughter in his voice. Every time he reminded her, unprompted, "You're not alone anymore, Emma." She still didn't know how to let that truth settle inside her. But one afternoon, Nathan changed everything again. He invited her to a place she didn't even know existed, an old waterfront property, once a textile mill, now converted into a sprawling co-working hub for Heart scholars. That's what he called them, people the foundation had taken in, trained, and supported as they launched businesses, non-profits, even creative projects, single mothers, veterans, former foster youth, young ex-cons, dreamers who had once been dismissed as problems. And now, they were building something. Nathan walked beside her through the sunlit halls lined with whiteboards, laughter, and determination. He nodded to nearly every person they passed. They all seemed to know him, not just his name, but who he was. Not a man of wealth, a man who remembered what it meant to fall. Emma stopped at a glass-walled room where a woman no older than 30 was giving a pitch to 3 investors. Her slides were hand-drawn. Her voice shook slightly, but her eyes were on fire. "Her name's Danielle," Nathan said. "She was living out of her car 6 months ago. Now she's launching a sustainable clothing line, got 3 buyers already waiting." Emma turned to him. "How do you choose who to help?" He paused. "I don't," he said. "They choose themselves. I just listened for the ones whose dreams still burn louder than their fear." That night, back home, Emma sat beside Micah on the couch. He was snoring softly, the TV buzzing with an old cartoon marathon. She pulled the blanket up to his chin, then reached for the envelope that had come in the mail earlier. It was from the foundation. Inside, a letter-handwritten. Emma, you are not here by accident. You're here because you were brave enough to speak your truth. You're not just part of this program, you're part of its future. I'd like you to consider something bigger, a project of your own, something close to your heart. When you're ready, come find me, Nathan. Emma stared at the words long after the ink had dried. Her own project, her own vision. She didn't even know what she wanted most beyond keeping her brother safe. But now, maybe there was room for more. The next day, she found herself walking alone through the Hart Foundation library, notebook in hand. The sunlight poured through the floor-to-ceiling windows, painting golden rectangles across the mahogany floor, and that's where she saw a photo, framed and resting on a low shelf. It wasn't labeled, just an image of a little girl, maybe 9, her face dirty, her eyes fierce, standing in front of a condemned house holding a sign that read, "I have dreams too." Emma's breath caught. It wasn't her, but it was her. She sat down at a nearby desk, opened her notebook, and wrote just 5 words. What if dreams had shelters? She didn't even fully understand what that meant yet, but it sparked something. She remembered how many nights she and Micah had nearly been homeless, how many days she'd stayed quiet about their situation out of shame, how many kids she'd seen over the years, kids just like her who didn't need a miracle, just a place to be safe, a voice in the dark, someone who believed. Later that week, Emma pitched it to Nathan. She was nervous, visibly shaking. Her voice cracked halfway through, but she got the words out. She told him about her idea, a safe transitional housing program for youth caregivers, for kids taking care of siblings, disabled parents, or aging grandparents, a place that offered shelter and skill building, not charity infrastructure, not pity-preparation. When she finished, Nathan didn't speak at first. Then he whispered, almost to himself, "That's the one." She blinked. "What?" "That's the fire I was waiting to see in your eyes," he said. "Let's build it." The tears came before she could stop them, but they weren't from fear anymore. They were from finally being seen. What Emma didn't know was that across the city, forces were already moving. Not everyone supported Nathan Hart's mission. Not everyone believed in change. Not everyone wanted people like Emma to rise. And someone powerful was watching. The storm didn't announce itself with thunder. It came quietly, through a knock at the foundation's door, followed by a folded envelope with no return address. It was marked only with Emma's name. She wasn't there when it arrived. She was at the children's hospital, sitting with Micah after another long physical therapy session. His legs had trembled with effort as he stood, gripping the railings, sweat dotting his forehead, but he hadn't fallen. He'd smiled. That smile made her believe the world was changing. But when she returned to the Foundation's campus that evening, the air felt heavier. Nathan met her at the gate, his usual calm now weighed down by something unspoken. "We need to talk," he said. She followed him to his office. The space was quiet, lit only by the amber hue of a desk lamp. On the table between them sat the envelope. He slid it toward her. Emma frowned and opened it slowly. Inside was a single printed sheet, its tone legal, cold, and clinical. Her chest tightened as she read. The letter came from a private equity firm, one that years ago had quietly purchased her family's old apartment building, the same place she and Micah had lived after their parents disappeared, the same place they'd nearly been evicted from during the worst year of their lives. The firm now claimed Emma owed a resettlement balance tied to backdated occupancy. Claims it was nonsense, but legal nonsense, crafted with precision, the kind designed not to be understood, only feared. At the bottom, in small print, was a signature, Donovan Ellery. Emma's hands froze. She knew that name. Everyone in the city did. A real estate tycoon with a reputation for playing dirty, buying out neighborhoods, evicting tenants, silencing complaints with court orders. He had power. He had money. And apparently now, he had a problem with her. "I don't understand," she whispered. "Why now?" Nathan's jaw tensed. "Because you're becoming visible." He stood, crossing to a cabinet in the corner of the room, pulling out a folder filled with photos and reports. He spread them on the table. Blueprints, financial projections, even an early draft of her shelter project proposal. "He got wind of what we're planning," Nathan said, "and he doesn't like it. Your idea threatens an empire built on broken systems. He's not attacking you. He's trying to scare you, silence you before you make noise." Emma shook her head. "But it's all lies." "That's how men like him work," Nathan said. They don't deal in truth, they deal in fear. For a moment, she felt her legs go numb. The old panic crept in, the same kind that used to visit her during final eviction notices and empty fridge nights. But then she looked down at the proposal draft, at the title in her own handwriting. What if dreams had shelters? Mika's face flashed in her mind. Then the faces of all the people she'd met these past few weeks. Danielle, the young designer. Carlos, the vet opening a tech repair shop. Jasmine, the teen mom learning to code. They weren't just her future, they were her why. She straightened in her chair. What do we do now? She asked. Nathan smiled, quietly proud. Now, we fight smart. What followed were days filled with quiet strategy. The foundation's legal team filed a counterclaim. Local activists, once helped by Nathan, began speaking out. Former tenants of Donovan Ellery's properties stepped forward, sharing their stories eerily similar to Emma's. A journalist at the Sentinel, an independent paper, picked up the story. Emma never asked anyone to speak on her behalf, but they did anyway. And when the story hit the front page, Billionaire targets, woman behind groundbreaking shelter plan, everything changed. Calls poured in, donations, letters of support, volunteers. People who had never heard of the Heart Foundation were now asking how they could help. But with the attention came danger too. One night, Emma returned home to find her mailbox pried open and a single matchstick resting inside. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She called Nathan. "I'm not stopping," she told him. "I'm scared, but I'm not stopping." He was silent for a long time. Then he said, "I lost someone once. She gave up everything to help someone like you. And when they came after her, she didn't run either." Emma whispered, "What happened to her?" Nathan's voice cracked slightly. "She died believing she'd made a mistake, that no one would ever carry the torch she lit." Emma closed her eyes, swallowing hard. She was wrong, she said. That weekend, the Heart Foundation hosted a citywide town hall. Emma stood on stage before a packed auditorium. Residents, community leaders, reporters, students. She told her story. Not the polished version, the real one. She talked about nights in freezing apartments, about hiding in closets with Micah during inspections so they wouldn't be caught, about crying herself to sleep while promising him tomorrow would be better. Then she told them what she wanted to build. She ended with a line that wasn't rehearsed, but came from something deep inside her. Power isn't in money, it's in memory. We don't forget the nights we were invisible, and we don't stop fighting until the next girl, like me, never has to be. The crowd stood. All of them, and in the front row, Nathan looked up at her, not like a billionaire, not like a boss, like someone who finally believed he hadn't failed the person he lost. And as the lights dimmed and the applause filled the room, Emma realized something she'd never thought possible. She wasn't surviving anymore. She was rising. The storm finally broke on a Wednesday, not the kind with thunder, but the kind that comes in headlines, court rulings, and sudden, irreversible change. Emma sat in a quiet room at the Heart Foundation, sunlight pouring in through the windows, her fingers wrapped tightly around a chipped coffee mug she hadn't yet sipped from. Nathan stood across from her, leaning against the desk, a legal brief in his hand. "It's over," he said softly. She blinked. "What do you mean?" Nathan handed her the document. Her eyes scanned the bold type at the top. "All claims against Emma Whitman have been dismissed in full." The judge had ruled that the equity firm's claims were baseless and that the case appeared to be an act of malicious intimidation. But it wasn't just thrown out, it was publicly condemned. A new investigation was being launched into Donovan Ellery's company. Whistleblowers were already stepping forward. Emma's hands trembled, the mug still untouched. "I didn't think I'd win," she said, barely above a whisper. Nathan smiled. "You didn't, we did. Everyone who believed in you, everyone you inspired." For a moment, Emma didn't know how to breathe. All those sleepless nights, all those moments spent doubting herself, fearing what the next day would bring. And now, she stood in the light. But it wasn't the end, in many ways. It was the beginning. The next month moved like a blur. Emma's shelter initiative, officially named Harbor House, was approved for funding. Not just by the Heart Foundation, but also by a coalition of local businesses, non-profits, and grassroots supporters who'd rallied to her side. A vacant, historic building, once a shuttered library, was donated by the city and would become the first Harbor House location. Emma spent every day planning floor layouts, staff interviews, partnership meetings, licensing. She worked late into the night beside Micah, who was now walking short distances without help, his steps slow but full of pride. "Do you think Mum and Dad would be proud?" he asked one night, sitting beside her on their worn couch, the city lights flickering outside. Emma paused. "I think they'd be amazed," she said, "because I know I am." But beneath the joy and motion, something tugged quietly at her heart. Not regret, not doubt, just curiosity. She hadn't seen Nathan much in the past 2 weeks. He'd been traveling, handling fallout from the Ellery case, restructuring parts of the foundation, and even when he returned, something in him had shifted. He was quieter, more distant. Finally, one evening as the sun fell over the river, she found him on the old rooftop terrace of the foundation building, his coat unbuttoned, hands in his pockets, staring out at the city. "I feel like I'm losing you," she said. He turned, surprised but not angry. "You're not," he said. "I've just been ... thinking." "About what?" Nathan hesitated. Then he sat on the bench, motioning for her to join him. "When I first created this place," he said, "I thought I was trying to save the world. But really, I was trying to save her." Emma didn't ask who. She already knew. "The woman you lost," she said. He nodded. She believed in second chances, believed in fighting systems instead of just surviving them. "She had all the passion I pretended to have. I built the foundation in her name, but I never believed anyone else could carry that fire." He looked at her then, eyes softer than she'd ever seen them. "Until you..." Emma felt her breath catch. "Nathan, I'm not going to be here forever," he continued. "This place doesn't need a figurehead. It needs a heart. Someone who understands what it means to lose everything and still give everything." He pulled out a letter sealed with the Heart Foundation emblem. "I want you to take over as Director of Community Programs. Full leadership. Harbor House is just the start." Emma stared at him. "Stunned me. But I'm still learning." "You're not learning," he interrupted gently. "You're leading, and people follow not because you have answers, but because you ask the right questions." Tears burned at the edges of her eyes. "I don't know what to say." "Say yes." She laughed through the tears. "Yes, of course, yes." The weeks that followed became the most beautiful blur of her life. Harbor House opened its doors. On day 1, 3 siblings arrived, ages 6, 10, and 16, having just lost their guardian. Emma knelt to greet them, her voice steady, her smile genuine. "You're safe now," she said. "This place is yours." That night, she sat in her office alone, the glow of the desk lamp casting warm light on the wall behind her where the photograph of the little girl with the sign, "I have dreams too," now hung. And beneath it, a new framed note in her own handwriting. She doesn't need a miracle. She needs a door that opens. One afternoon, she walked into the cafe where it all began. Not in her waitress uniform, but in a simple navy dress, hair pulled back, purpose in her step. Mark, her old manager, blinked in disbelief. "Emma," she nodded with a polite smile. "Just visiting." As she turned to leave, a young waitress, maybe 19, rushed up behind her. "Are you Emma Whitman?" Emma turned, startled. "Yes, I saw your story on the news. My little brother has cerebral palsy. I've been working doubles to keep us in school. I just wanted to say thank you for giving people like us hope." Emma didn't know what to say, so she hugged her instead. Sometimes the best stories aren't the loudest. They begin with pain, stumble through fear, and then not in perfection but in purpose. And sometimes, when one person speaks their truth, the world listens, one life at a time, one open door at a time. And somewhere across the city, Nathan Harper looked out over the skyline with quiet satisfaction, because he hadn't given Emma a gift. He'd simply returned what the world had tried to steal from her. The chance to rise.